Hey guys, Morgan here. Today I'm going to show you how to make these wooden pumpkins. They're a great decoration for fall or Halloween. Really fun project and simple to make. Let's get right into it. The first thing I did was find some scraps that were around the same size. These happen to be 1/2 inch thick, but you could use any size available. I then traced a rough outline of what the pumpkin shape will look like. That way I know where to put my top and bottom supports. If it's a bigger pumpkin, you may need a middle support as well. I used a plate for this size pumpkin, but you could use any plate or container that's roughly the same size as the pumpkin you're looking to cut out. Next, I glued my top and bottom support to the back of what will become the pumpkin. I just used regular wood glue and a few brad nails for this. After you glue down your supports, you'll want to flip over your pieces of wood and mark roughly where that circle was that you drew on the back and redraw it on the front. This is where I started to lay out my support lines where I wanted the bottom of the pumpkin to be, as well as drawing out the rough outline of the actual pumpkin shape. Once you're satisfied with your pumpkin design, you'll want to take it to the bandsaw or use a jigsaw and roughly cut it out. Now, I didn't cut up to my line because I'm not that proficient with a bandsaw. I'm going to sand off the rest here. I went around and cleaned up those edges. You may not have to do this step if you're good at using a bandsaw and you can get a really clean edge. But like I said, it was easier for me to go back after the fact with my sander and clean up those edges and bring it up to my line. After sanding, I went to the router table and I put a 1/4 inch round over on all sides of the pumpkin except for the bottom. I then took the pumpkin and sanded the face of it, the back of it, and the sides to clean it up a little bit, as well as bringing all the scrap pieces to the same even level on the face.
Get on it. Done. It's star time. Ladies and gentlemen, bass.
Next, I laid out a piece of scrap that I had that was a little bit wider than the ones I used for the pumpkin. I drew a line about a 1/2 inch past on each side of the bottom and cut it on the miter saw to length. I then also rounded over all 4 sides of that piece on the top. This will become the base for the pumpkin. Next, I found a twig in my yard and I cut the bottom flat and the top at a 45-degree angle. This will become the stem of the pumpkin. You can use any old stick or branch from a tree, something that's roughly 1/2 inch in diameter. Then drilled a 1/2 inch hole in the top of the pumpkin using a brad point drill bit to keep it on center. Next, I sanded the base of the pumpkin and cleaned up all the edges on that to get it ready to be glued together. I then laid out some tape on my workbench to put epoxy on. I mixed up the 2-part epoxy, and this is what I'm going to use to attach the stem to the top of the pumpkin. I put epoxy on both the twig that I had cut off as well as the inside of the hole that we drilled on the pumpkin. Sorry, I ended up getting it off camera, but that's what I'm doing here, gluing the 2 pieces together and letting it sit for 5 minutes to cure. I then set the pumpkin on the base, found the center, and marked a line so I would know where to set it after putting glue on. I then glued up the pumpkin to the base, applied some pressure for a few seconds, and then let that sit to dry. No weights are needed because we're going to come back with screws after the glue is dried to reinforce it. After that, I turned the pumpkin on its side and I drew a line across the bottom where I'll later put in my screws. I then marked for my screw holes, I countersunk them, and put in 2 number 6 1-inch screws. I then gave the pumpkin one final sanding, cleaning up any excess glue and just going over the edges one more time and up near the stem where any excess epoxy might be. After finishing with the sanding, it was now time to paint the pumpkin. Now this is totally up to you. I chose to paint this one orange. I've also left other ones natural. I've done some with boiled linseed oil. I even torched a couple of them to give them a burned look. So this is totally up to you on how you decorate your pumpkin, but this is the classic orange that I'm showing here. I used a foam brush for this. You can use any brush you have on hand. I just had a foam brush and also a cheap throwaway smaller brush that I used to get around the stem and in some of the tighter areas.
Ladies and gentlemen, bass.
After you finish painting your pumpkin is now complete. It makes a great decoration for the holidays or a great gift for friends and family. Thank you so much for watching. This is a really fun project anybody can do in an hour or two. Really simple to make. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments down below. And until next time, have a good day.